everyone. Sorry that took so long. I'm Representative Samantha Sensor-Mura. I represent District 63A, which is a part of South Minneapolis. And I'm also a member of the Education Finance Committee. And I'm here today with Leader Jamie Long to talk about an ethics complaint that we have filed against Representative Hudson and Representative Engen. You know, for me, one of the most important roles that I play here at the Capitol is as a member of the Education Finance Committee, where together we make incredibly important decisions that impact the over 900,000 students that attend school in Minnesota. I take that work really seriously, and it's disappointing and concerning to see that some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't take that work as seriously. We saw that right before the legislative break, 2 members of our committee left in the middle of some really important bill hearings and presentations. The day before legislative break, we were talking about the important issues of teacher retention. How do we make sure that we have the right people teaching our kids? How do we make sure that they are staying in the classroom? We were also hearing a bill about student absenteeism, which we know is a huge issue right now in Minnesota. We need to make sure that our kids are in school. And instead of being models for showing up and doing the work, we had 2 members, Representative Engen and Representative Hudson, who decided to leave that committee and apparently were seen at a local bar drinking, and then came back to the floor where we took, again, incredibly important votes on things like keeping ICE agents out of our school buildings and ensuring that our kids and our state can be free from gun violence. There's a lot of questions coming out of what we know about their behavior on Thursday, about questions about their ability to fulfill the roles that they have as legislators, to show up for committee, to do the work, and that's why we filed that ethics complaint.
We saw 2 members, as Representative Sensor-Mura mentioned, of the Education Finance Committee leave committee in the middle of consideration of a bill, nearly an hour before the committee adjourned, when there was an entire second bill that had not been considered, to go drinking at a local bar. An ethics complaint is a very serious thing. I have never brought an ethics complaint before. I have never considered bringing one. I haven't seen one brought in my time here in the legislature. But nor have I seen actions as blatant as this, where they are completely disregarding their duties as members of this body and disregarding their duties to their constituents. Our ethics process is here to try to uphold the rules and the integrity of this institution, and they violated those rules blatantly by leaving committee in the middle of consideration, a committee they had been appointed to until today by Speaker Demuth, to go drinking at a local bar. So we are hopeful that the ethics process will proceed and that they can recommend an appropriate sanction for Representatives Hudson and Engen. Happy to take any questions.
You had said earlier you didn't think the punishment was strong enough. Have members of your party who've been charged with DWI, how have they been punished by your caucus?
Our ethics complaint does not touch any criminal complaints that may be coming for any members. The criminal process, in our view, can take care of those. What we're talking about is the dereliction of duty from individuals who did not attend a committee, left it early to go drinking. That is an appropriate process for the ethics committee to consider.
So that's separate from the DWI charge?
Our ethics complaint, as I said, does not touch the DWI charge.
And what about the concern about carrying, that potentially could have been carrying while drinking here in the chamber or in the building?
That's an open question that our ethics complaint asks about. We don't know the answers as to whether or not Representatives Hudson and Engen were inebriated when they came back to the floor. We don't know the answer about whether Representative Hudson's blood alcohol content was above the legal limit of 0.04%. Certainly, if both of those things were true, that would be another concerning thing that would also violate our House ethics rules and would be against our rules.
Just to Tom's question really quickly, do you remember if the House DFL leadership did anything in response to Wolgamott's DWI? I know it doesn't have to do with the ethics complaint, but just could you comment on if there was any response?
Yes, Speaker Hortman did remove him as Speaker Pro Tem after that instance.
What punishment do you think would be appropriate?
Well, that's a good question. We don't know all of the facts yet. We don't know whether or not he was committing a misdemeanor, Representative Hudson, on the House floor by having a blood alcohol content over the legal limit for carrying a firearm. We don't know if they were inebriated on the House floor. But certainly, we know that the penalty should be more than removing them from committee. because they didn't want to be in committee anyway. They weren't attending committee. In fact, nearly the entire Republican caucus voted to adjourn just a couple of weeks ago. They don't want to be here. The entire Republican caucus to date spent 2.5 hours so that none of them had to go to education finance. So it seems like none of them want to be in committee or doing the work here today.
Is this effort all kind of a fruitless one? I mean, you're looking at a tied house, you're pretty dug in on your partisan sides here. The ethics committee abides by the same power sharing agreement. Is this all theater to file this complaint at this moment?
I will say that in my mind, this is doing right by the kids of Minnesota and the people of Minnesota who send us here to do the work, to tackle hard issues, and to not leave in the middle of the day to go drinking. I think that's a pretty low bar that all legislators should be able to meet. I will say that I think all members of our body have extreme respect for the members of the ethics committee. They are some of the most legislators who have the most integrity in our body. So I trust that they can move through the process, that they can work to answer some of the key questions that we have, and to think about how do we all as legislators hold ourselves to the high standard that Minnesotans should have for us.
Can you confidently say that no members of your caucus have left campus during the day and maybe had a drink and then came back to do work?
I know of no one who has ever done that from the Democratic caucus or the Republican caucus. If a member of our caucus did that, we would believe that they should face consequences too. That is not something that any member of the public expects of their representative. They are supposed to be at work. They are appointed to committees. That's where the bulk of the legislative work here happens. It's the Education Finance Committee, which deals with funding all of our schools in the state of Minnesota. And they left in the middle with almost an hour to go and weren't even available to hear bills because they went to a local bar. That should be out of bounds for any member of the legislature.
Complaint against Representative Falconer is a valid concern. What are your thoughts on that complaint?
Well, I think the timing is telling, right? They brought that complaint after we filed our ethics complaint. Turns out Representative Falconer loves the Boundary Waters. I don't think that's a story. They're trying to distract from the fact that 2 of their members left committee to go drinking and then later wound up having a DWI.
But is he being paid by an organization that he is actively carrying legislation for? Isn't that a violation?
No, he left being a lobbyist from the organization. It's not a violation to care about the same issue as your day job.
Should lawmakers be able to carry legislation supported by the organizations they work for as well? I mean, I understand he supports the environment in general, but
the rules are that you're not allowed to lobby on issues. He is not lobbying on the issues of the Boundary Waters. He has cut ties with that. And I don't think there's any violation for caring about an issue that you work on in your day job. We have teachers up here who carry bills that impact teachers. We have Boundary Waters advocates who carry bills that impact the Boundary Waters.
isn't he still employed as a federal government? What's the name? A federal governmental relations advocate for one of the organizations?
He works on federal issues for the state of Boundary Waters. He does not work on state issues.
But he still works for their lobbying. That's their lobbying team.
He works on federal issues. He doesn't work on state issues.
Was he being paid as a lobbyist while carrying that legislation in 25?
No.
Absolutely. You've gotten assurances from him he did not get paid.
Correct.
Do you think there's enough disclosure? Could he have disclosed more?
He was a registered state lobbyist, and then he left being a registered state lobbyist. I think that's adequate disclosure.
Should the conflict of interest rules be changed or tightened to prevent even, the semblance of conflict of interest in situations like this? Like, should you have stricter rules, even if you didn't violate the rules now?
We are a part-time legislature where we are not paid enough for most members to be able to not work outside the legislature. We have legislators who work in all sorts of fields, and they legislate on all sorts of issues related to their day jobs up here. So it really is difficult to draw the line. The place we've drawn the line is on registering as a lobbyist and doing lobbying at the state level, and that is not a line that Representative Falconer crossed.
Do you have any thoughts on the White Bear Police and why they apparently decided not to give a test to Representative Hudson?
There is some discussion about whether or not there should be a change to the law. It does seem to us like if an individual is suspected of having a blood alcohol content that could be a violation, there's no reason not to test them. You could decide not to bring charges later, but the fact that they didn't test means that they're not able to bring charges. So that is a loophole that we're looking at.
So it should possibly be mandated that if there's a drunk driving incident and there's a concealed or a weapon involved, there should be a test for that person?
That's certainly something we're looking at.
What do you really expect will come of this complaint?
You know, again, I spoke to the integrity of members of the ethics committee, and I think part of the work that they have to do is work to answer some of the questions that we still have. So I trust them to do that work.
Thank you all.
One last question. There hasn't been, as you said, since you've been here, any ethics complaints. There's kind of been almost this unspoken agreement. We don't bring ethics complaints, you don't bring them unless it's something totally egregious. Did this finally reach a threshold for you?
It did, in our minds. As I've mentioned, I have never experienced members leaving committee early to go drinking. That has never happened in my experience. I don't know if it's happened in yours, Tom, you can remember, but we couldn't think of any instances of that happening, and it is so egregious that they would simply abandon their jobs to go to a bar in the middle of the day, in the middle of a committee hearing, that yes, we thought that rose to the level of an ethics violation.
What about DWIs? There's about 5 members of the legislature since I've been here that have had them. Is it unusual to you, knowing how many you have been here?
Well, as I mentioned, we don't view DWIs as being an appropriate part of the ethics process, that there is a criminal complaint process for DWIs. Members of both parties have not brought complaints under the ethics process for outside criminal conduct. That's not what we're doing here. We're not dealing with the criminal side. We can let the courts take care of that. What we're dealing with is what happened here at the Capitol when 2 members walked out of committee to go drinking. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.